Lessons that I have learned. First and foremost, do not get legally married, period. And I'm not saying don't get married, don't be in a committed relationship, but don't involve the law with it. The law is going to bring an automatic prenup that can change at any point depending on who's in office and how the laws go and what that sort of thing. So you either have a default prenup from the state, from the government, or you do your own prenup. But why? What's the point in it? Why involve the law in the first place? Because if you want to leave something to that individual, if you were to pass before them, or if you want medical, if you want any of those sort of things, you can unilaterally create those documents, and then you are in sole control of them, right? It's a unilateral decision with you and yourself. So if you want out of that relationship, something were to happen, you can get out. Now, just because you file for divorce does not mean that your spouse is going to sign those papers, first and foremost. That's a little scary. Also, because really then you're trapped, right? But also, the process of divorce is not so simple, as I've learned the hard way. Depending on the state, of course, I'm in America, so I'm speaking for the laws here, and I'm in North Carolina, but you've got to be, quote, separated for like a year, which your spouse has to agree on when the separation happens, and North Carolina defines that as living separately. So it's a whole thing. You can't just like break up with someone and move about your business. Um, just so many reasons not to involve the law. If you want to get committed, if you want to do the whole thing, have a ceremony, have the rings, use the titles, by all means, go ahead and do that. But why involve the law? The tax write-off is not worth it. Um, Also, before you do any sort of committed relationship, law aside, even if you want to do a committed relationship, you can't do that relationship justice until you are a whole individual yourself. And I fell into this trap. I was not a whole individual, and I didn't even. It's like becoming healthy. You don't know how good you can feel until you feel that good. You don't know how whole you can be until you become that whole. So this is things like dealing with your childhood traumas and traumas beyond your childhood, right? Dealing with all of your traumas. Then being emotionally intelligent, which is regulating yourself, giving yourself discipline as well as grace, being able to do that balance between accountability and grace, and being truly healthy. That way your mind is able to think and you're able to see reality for what it is. And for me, this means staying off hormonal birth control. I was put on hormonal birth control as a senior in high school, y'all. Senior in high school. And while hormonal birth control has its benefits, like women were able to, obviously have a baby when, more, yeah, it's not 100% effective and all that sort of stuff, but we were more able to regulate when we wanted to have a baby, when we didn't want to have a baby, because freedom, careers, all that sort of stuff, but it didn't come with its downsides, without its downsides, and we are discovering that, we as a society are discovering that now as studies are being done about it. It messes with your brain, and like I said, I was put on this as a senior in high school. I never wanted to get married. I never wanted to have kids. And then I was put on hormonal birth control combined with some other things I'm going to mention. And I think it changed my brain chemistry to the point that I was like, oh, marriage, la-di-da, like Cinderella story, happily ever after. Sure, why not? So hormonal birth control, as we are discovering, changes with your brain chemistry. I was put on it as a senior in high school because my pediatricians, I had turned 18, so my pediatricians gave me the boots, understandably so. I was no longer a kid. I was a legal adult. Went on to this, oh my God, it was such a traumatic doctor's appointment. I was doing ballet full time. I mean, not full time. I was still going to school. Like I was doing ballet on the side, but I was doing it more than just once, one class a week, whatever. I was doing at least 2 hours a day. On the weekends, it was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours of ballet, point work, all the things. And while my skills were not so great, it was a lot of calories being burned. Okay. And so I was 95 pounds, lean, all the things, very capable, very, strong for a 95-pound. Like I wasn't weak. But this doctor took one look at me, and I mean, she tore me apart. She was like, you're 95. And this is before I was able to stand on my own 2 feet, right? So I took this appointment, and it killed me. she was like, you're 95 pounds, you're so malnutritioned, you're this, you're that, you're so unhealthy, you're never going to be able to have kids. I mean, she just ripped me to pieces. And she was like, and you don't have a cycle, so we're going to put you on birth control, that way you have a cycle. So I was. Then, when I became 21, I started drinking alcohol, and I just drank it in a social thing, and I'd have the red wine because it was healthy and all that sort of stuff. But as I've learned from Dr. Huberman, so grateful for his podcast, I learned, what was it, 2 years ago or so? Maybe more, I don't know. When I saw his podcast on alcohol, I just stopped. Because I was like, I don't want to poison my brain. I've got 2 brain cells left. I can't afford to lose any more, right? So between that, sleep deprivation, I fell into that whole hustle culture in high school and then beyond. And I had been sleep deprived really since my later high school years, since really like sophomore, junior year of high school, all through college, through marriage, like through my 20s. Like, I've been sleep deprived for a long time. Also, with getting healthy, it's your nutrition. Now, I happen to have a mutation on my MTHR gene. There's like 600 different mutations and they test for 2. But I happen to have one of the gene mutations, and when you have this mutation on that gene, you can't convert fultic acid into fultate. Fultic with the IC is a synthetic version that we, Americans, spray here on our grains. So anything that's enriched or fortified is the marketing term for we've sprayed this with fultic, the IC version of fultate. These are B vitamins. I think it's the B9, but don't quote me. I may be wrong about that. The point being is that when you have this gene mutation, you can't convert the fultic IC into the fultate ATE. The ATE version is the actual your body can actually use that version. That's the version that your body actually needs. So if you aren't able to make this conversion, the fultic, the synthetic version, builds up in your system. This causes inflammation, your homocysteine levels to increase, a cascading negative effects all down your body. And now you're also deficient in the natural version, the ATE version that you actually need. It's a whole cascading of negative effects. So I stopped that, which really here in the States means to stop gluten. I mistakenly thought it also meant to stop oats for a while, but apparently oats are still okay. They don't have the they don't have the enriched or the fortified marketing words on them. But be careful about that. There's some rice that have those. There's some corn. Be careful. Watch for those marketing words, because that's really the glossed over of like, this has been sprayed. And they don't have that over in Europe. So I don't think it's so much the gluten that's at fault. I think if I were to have gluten over in Europe that hasn't been sprayed, or anywhere, right? It doesn't really matter where. But that hasn't been sprayed, my body would be just fine. But I don't know. It caused a whole bunch of issues for my thyroid and beyond. I've also stopped ultra processed foods. I don't want someone in the comments to be like, almond butter is processed. When you cook broccoli, that's processed. Yes, thank you. Ultra processed foods, we all know what we mean when we say that. It's seed oils in excess or any amount that have been heated. Those become rancid in any amount that have been heated, and if you eat them in excess, that's also harmful. Now, if you have an avocado, that's fine. It's with the avocado, right? If you do olives, that's fine. It's with the olives. But seed oils in excess, we were never supposed to press them out and just have them. There's some debate about olive oil. I think that's in a class of itself. It may be helpful a little bit at a time, maybe a tablespoon or so here or there throughout your day. But processed foods, so here in the United States, that is anything with gluten, because all of it's been sprayed. Watch out for your rices, because that's also been sprayed. It's also things like dairy. We're not meant to have dairy beyond babyhood, and we're not meant to have it from another mammal. You look out in nature, and if that were to happen, that's a sad situation, right? If you see a cat nursing a pup, nursing a dog, that's a sad situation. It's better than that cat or that kitten dying. But ideally, that kitten has its own mother, has its own species, right? And once we're out of infancy, mammals should not have dairy. And I know there are still some functional physicians who are advocating for things like Greek yogurt and whatnot. But really, what I think is happening is that they're talking to the masses. And here in the United States, the standard has been set so low, the bar has been set so low that yes, of course, Greek yogurt is better than McDonald's. Of course. So if you're looking at yourself and you're like, well, where I am right now, it's between Greek yogurt or a McDonald's thing, of course have the Greek yogurt. But is it optimizing yourself? No. So it's getting dairy out, it's getting seed oils, it's getting all of the added sugar. And I don't think that sugar in and of itself is bad, but the amount that we have combined with the low amount of physical activity is bad. Like if you're running a marathon, yeah, you need to have sugar on board. Like your body needs to work. It needs to have the glucose, needs to have the, the ability, like carbs are not the enemy, It's the refined stuff. And it's all of the additives with it. I'm really excited that red dye has been banned. Apparently, it's been banned now, and a bunch of other things need to be added to that list. So now that you are actually healthy, now that you've dealt with your childhood traumas, you're emotionally intelligent, you're on your way to becoming whole. How do you know that you've become whole? Well, you are able to regulate your own emotions, discipline yourself as well as nurture yourself, and you enjoy being with yourself. And it's at this point that external things can be added to your life. But until you become whole, until you become, like, you achieve that self-acquisition, you can't do a relationship justice, an outside relationship justice. You first need to deal with the relationship with yourself. You need to become your own best friend. No external thing, person, like nothing else can fill that void. You've got to do the work to become your own best friend. You should enjoy spending time with yourself. And at that point, you can bring in external things like relationships. They are the cherry on your wholesome cake. You have to have that wholesome cake first. You can bring in other wholesome activities like art. But you've got to be whole first. Now, when you do bring in those external things, be wary of some signs in those pursuits, okay? This is things like being put into a corner, and there's some valleys, right? Some peaks and valleys. If you're in a committed relationship and say your spouse wants to pursue, I don't know, a business, a degree, something, and you kind of take on more of the day-to-day logistics so they can do this, and you put your dreams on side a little bit, okay, you've talked about that ahead of time. It's going to be 3-6 months, maybe a year of time, but you're going to get to return to living your best life, like to running at your dreams, right? You should not be put into a corner for a decade, though. Being ghostlit. To any extent, you should never be ghostlit. There's no peaks and valleys there. Asking for help and not receiving it. Maybe this falls at, like, my bullet point number 1 of being pushed into a corner of, like, the ebbs and flows, because maybe your spouse isn't able to give it, if they're sick, if they're whatever. But in general, if you ask for help, if you're like, hey, I'm overwhelmed, or I've got too much on my plate, or whatever, you should get some help from it. And the unbalanced give and take of love. Again, some ebbs and flows as life, peaks and valleys as life, the logistics of life. But in general, overall, if you look at the big picture, you're giving love, you're receiving love. You should not just be giving, and then never receiving in return. And these are simple things. These are just like, what do you want for dinner? And actually having an answer. Or if you know that your wife really loves plants with roots, right? Like if you have a wife that is like, I don't want you to spend money on flowers because that's frivolous, they're going to die in a week, then come home with a plant with flowers. Come home with a rose plant or a hydrangea with roots, not with flowers. I meant to say roots. That she can plant in the garden. Like, come home with seeds. Oh my God, do you know how happy I am just receiving seeds, sunflower seeds or whatever, and planting them in the yard and then having sunflowers? There's $1. It does not have to be expensive or extravagant. It's just more like, I was thinking of you. It could be notes left in your spouse's car of like, hey, have a great day. It could be washing their car, giving it a vacuum, like so many things. Doing the dishes ahead of time, doing things ahead of time that are not asked of you, just to show that you're thinking of them. I remember going through a phase where I was given coffee every morning. This was early in my marriage, and I was given coffee in bed, and that was one of the most delightful times when I look back on my marriage. I loved those mornings of receiving coffee and I didn't have to get out of bed and it was just there and it was so nice. So moving forward, I am taking all of these lessons with me. I am so grateful for the education. I'd rather learn it now than never, right? Sure, I am no spring chicken, but in September, I am only turning 37. I know I have to trust people over 30 these days. It's kind of, oh, it's a thing. But I'm only turning 37. I'd rather learn these sometime than never. So I'm grateful for the lessons, grateful for the experiences. I'm taking them along with me. And again, I am not against committed relationships, but I'm by no means searching for one right now. Sure, if some guy were to just like sweep me off my feet, I would take it and be delighted. But I am just very, 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 very happy with myself. Not to say that I'm perfect. I'm also very happy with my life and where I have gotten to. I love my kiddos and my day-to-day and all the things, pursuing my dreams. I don't think that I'm all that in a bag of chips, but I am right for me. Does that make sense? You should be right for you. And that's not to say that you are perfect or that you think all that highly of yourself or that you're, whatever. But you're right for yourself. And that, I think, is the pinnacle of where we should all get to, right? We don't feel like anything is missing. We're just content with ourselves. We're just content with ourselves. When you get to the place in life where you just don't need any external things, I mean, that's beautiful. You're just calm and at peace with yourself. What more could you ask for?